On the morning of July 12, 1986, over 250 protesters turned out to picket a woman speaking at St. Theresa's Public Library in San Jose, California. Her name is Zsuzsanna Budapest. She is a witch.
The word witch comes from Wicca, W-I-C-C-A, and it comes from wicker, and wicker means to bend. And so it's the craft of the wise to bend. And bending is wisdom. Bending reality, bending your way so you don't break, you know. It's just another way of looking at nature. Wisdom is when the big wind blows, you bend.
Over 200 people showed up to support her right to speak.
Do you practice witchcraft yourself?
Yes.
11 police were called in to control the crowd and to protect Ms. Budapest, who had received death threats if she spoke.
We believe the best picket is our bodies.
What causes them to commit rape? What causes them to steal? What causes them to beat up old people and young people and other people?
Is it witchcraft?
Well, that helps, believe you me. It helps.
Well, we're here to show an objection to the use of our tax dollars to support a witchcraft presentation in the public libraries.
It's important to note that the speaker's fee was paid by a private organization.
And if the city attorney had ruled that this was a violation, I would have accepted that. But since the city attorney has ruled that this does not violate church-state, I'm happy with that.
Well, I could imagine this happening against the Jews in 1933 in Nazi Germany. People have to stand up in America against this kind of intimidation. When you have 500 people carrying signs against one woman, that's intimidation. Everybody should have a right to speak. Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, Jews, or communists, Nazis, anybody should have a right to speak in a library or any place in the United States.
If we were to deny the name witch, we would be cutting ourselves off from our spiritual forebears who were the practitioners of the nature religions of old.
Since she became a witch in 1967, Morning Glory Zell has been an outspoken defender of her religion.
The oldest religion of the world is a form of shamanism, pantheism, nature worship, if you will. And in Europe, this custom or this tradition was called Wicca, witchcraft. It's time for witches and goddess worshippers to come out of their broom closets and to come and share their knowledge and to share their expertise.
Some witches, like Valerie Mizialko, were never in the broom closet.
I practice witchcraft. That's why I smiled.
How do you feel about talking about it a little bit?
How do I feel about talking about it? I have mixed emotions about it. People respond to it differently. They always ask me if my pentagram is a Star of David, first of all.
Me too.
Me too.
And then I always find myself in a situation where I'm trying to explain something that is really not explainable to most people.
Some, like well-known author Starhawk, are outspoken.
I suppose I've been able to survive it because I have a basically bad attitude. And I think it's always important when you're making a decision about your spiritual identity is never to make it out of fear.
I will use the word Wicca. I don't personally use the word witch because it has so many negative connotations for most people.
And some, like Black Sun, consider stepping out of the broom closet a dangerous act.
Witches were once burned. And today, to say you're a witch would certainly have repercussions for most of the people in today's society.
What sort of repercussions?
Anything from avoiding doing business with you or throwing a bomb through your window. Depends upon how violent they want to get.
Where does the broom closet come from? Why was it built? And by whom?
Now, you call yourself a witch. I looked up the word witch in the dictionary today, and it said a witch is somebody who practices magic, usually of the injurious kind, and that it's often associated with worship of devils or other supernatural spirits. Does that describe you?
No, actually, wherever you looked it up was obviously written by a Christian, and it's informed exactly what the Christians, not all Christians, but most Christians think.
It was a standard English dictionary.
Yeah, well, I can bet you anything it was a Protestant who combined it and wasn't a pagan.
Pagan doesn't mean non-Christian. A lot of people think that's what it means. It means peasant, basically, country person. And the religion of the people, the old religion.
Stone Age Europeans have left us the oldest known religious objects, paintings of an antlered hunter god and fertility images of a mother goddess.
These matrikas, or Venuses as they're called in archaeology, are an image of Mother Nature, our oldest images of Mother Nature. And Mother Nature is a concept that is still with us today.
Later peoples constructed colossal stone megaliths which served as temples and as computers to predict the changing seasons. The modern religion of Wicca takes its inspiration from these early cultures. To understand the suppression of witchcraft, it is necessary to understand the struggle between native European paganism and the early Christian church. The Romans, who invaded and conquered Europe in the 2nd century BC, found a multitude of independent tribes, each worshipping its own local gods and goddesses. To pacify the barbarians, the conquerors Romanized these local gods, combining them with their own pantheon through divine marriages and other conventions. As long as they paid their tribute to Caesar, the barbarians were free to worship as they chose. During the 500 years of the Roman peace, the Romans, like Americans in the 60s, became fascinated by mystery religions from the Near East. The cults of Mithras, Isis, Cybele, and others spread rapidly throughout the empire. All were persecuted at one time or another for corrupting Roman youth. Among them, the cult of a Hebrew Messiah, Yeshua ben Miriam, was scarcely noticed at first. By AD 250, however, it had become the official state religion, and the Roman Catholic Church was born. When the Roman peace finally collapsed around 300 AD, it seemed like the end of the world. Waves of invaders swept over Europe, looting, burning. Local leaders, trained in Roman ways, often formed alliances with the Roman Catholic Church to secure their power base. One of them, a Frankish warlord named Charlemagne, became the first Northern European ruler to outlaw the popular worship of pagan idols in his realm. The common people lost their land, their freedom, and their gods. The Dark Ages had begun. But for hundreds of years thereafter, two religions coexisted. Christianity was the religion of the nobility. The peasants and serfs called themselves Christians, but retained their time-honored pagan ways. This is still true in some parts of the world, as Starhawk describes.
I went to Nicaragua in December of 1984 with Witness for Peace. What I found was that the Catholicism they practiced there was probably very much like Europe was in the 1500s or the 1600s, where you have witches and curanderas and all of these rites that are nominally Catholic but are actually very pagan, going on all the time side by side. So we happened to be there on the winter solstice, and I was in Corinto, which is the port town, the one that the U.S. mined the harbor of. And I had thought I would be the only person in all of Nicaragua that wanted to celebrate the winter solstice. I was sure I was going to have to give up my ritual plunge for the year, because there I was, you can't go running off and take your clothes off in a Catholic country, and, where people are at war and all this stuff is going on. But there we were on the beach. There was no one around. We didn't find out later that the reason there was no one around was because you weren't supposed to be on the beach at night, and they patrolled it, whatever. But we jumped in the ocean and had our plunge and did our ritual. We came out, and the whole town was up all night long celebrating a fiesta for their local virgin. They call the Virgin of Acta, who is their miraculous virgin, and she comes and she visits them 10 days out of the year. And they were spent the whole night up with a vigil for her on the solstice. And, yes, you go, At midnight, this man came out with this big wooden framework around him, and I asked some woman what it was. It looked like a horse. She laughed. She said, no, it's a bull. And this is like, the sacred bull and the virgin go way, way back, like to prehistoric times as symbols of the earth religion. I'm going, here it is, it's the winter solstice, it's midnight. Here is the sacred bull of light chasing away the darkness through the streets of Corinto.
when Christianity became a state religion and therefore a conqueror's religion, and the patriarchy began to take ascendance. Christianity initially was not a patriarchal religion at all. It was very much egalitarian.
During that period, first the Catholic and then the Protestant Church started a really concerted campaign to wipe out what was left of the old religion, and they did that through torture and through propaganda, through outlawing it, and through just horrendous murders of anyone who continued to practice it. So what was left of it had to become very, very secret and go underground.
I believe that this particular persecution dates from a time when there was an active pogrom against all psychic people, not just the women who were perhaps the midwives and practitioners of European shamanism or witchcraft, but anyone who had psychic talent or an ability for precognition. These are skills that were very threatening to the dominator model.
Bad press comes directly from the times of persecution. All the myths about witches, all of the stereotypes, you know, basically were lies.
There are also persecution of Jews at the same time. Even things like wiping out the cat population because somebody thought the cats were evil or something.
You know, the cat was a sacred animal to the goddess. Think about flying on brooms. The broom was the wand, and it was used in fertility rituals, and it was used as a way of sweeping clean, sweeping away negative energies.
For instance, if the mayor of the town was having trouble with, you know, one of the women in the town, or some of the women, all they'd have to do is just suggest that they were a witch. Priestesses were burned by the millions. There's all different estimates of how many were burned. But they were women and children and men too, especially gay men, were burned to start the fires. That's where the word faggot comes from.
Zsuzsanna Budapest describes one such experience.
I had 4 members of my family tortured in the 16th century. I had an aunt who was pregnant. She was accused of witchcraft because a bale of hay fell down in front of her house, and the man who owned the hay was just angry about it and said, "You're a witch, you made it fall down." She was arrested. Once you were arrested, there was no way coming home. The only thing our families could do is to bargain with the executioner so that the death comes swiftly and not through long tortures. The executioners would take out the last chair from your family's house in order to get payment for this mercy of quick killing. Pregnant as she was, they kept her in jail, and when it came time to give birth, they tied her legs together while the priests had drumsticks for lunch, and they watched her die in child labor. This was one of my ancestors.
Inasmuch as it was popularly believed that the continued sterility of many years was caused by witches through the malice of the devil, the whole country rose to exterminate the witches. This movement was promoted by many in office who hoped for wealth from the persecution. And so, from court to court, throughout the towns and villages of all the dioceses, scurried special accusers, inquisitors, notaries, jurors, judges, constables, dragging to trial and torture human beings of both sexes and burning them in great numbers. Scarcely any of those who were accused escaped punishment.
All witchcraft comes from carnal lust, which in women is insatiable. Wherefore, for the sake of fulfilling their lusts, they consort with devils. It is sufficiently clear that it is no matter for wonder that there are more women than men found infected with the heresy of witchcraft, and blessed be the highest who has so far preserved the male sex from so great a crime.
Was forced to dig her own grave. When she dug her own grave, she was forced to lie into it, and then the Christians of that time took iron rods and bashed her face in. These are the memories I have to live with every day. The Jews too were accused of using babies in their rituals. The Jews too were oppressed by this very same lie.
Parish priests, rural deans were swept away in this ruin. So far, at length, did the madness of the furious populace and of the courts go in this thirst for blood and booty, that there was scarcely anyone who was not smirched by some suspicion of this crime. Meanwhile, notaries, copyists, and innkeepers grew rich. The executioner rode a blooded horse, like a noble of the court, and went clad in gold and silver. His wife vied with noble dames in the richness of her array. The children of those convicted and punished were sent into exile. Their goods were confiscated. Plowman and vintner failed. Hence came sterility. A direr pestilence or a more ruthless invader could hardly have ravaged the territory of Trier than this Inquisition.
Class of witches who practice innumerable other harms
Persecution
also,
lasted for several
where they raise hailstorms and hurtful tempests and lightnings, cause sterility in men and animals, offer to devils or otherwise kill the children whom they do not devour. But these are only the children who have not been reborn by baptism at the font, for they cannot devour those who have been baptized, nor any without God's permission. They can also, before the eyes of their parents and when no one is in sight, throw into the water children walking by the waterside. They make horses go mad under their riders. They can transport themselves from
Innocent
place to
have I
place
come
through
into
air,
prison.
either in body.
Innocent have I been tortured. Innocent must I die. For whoever comes into the witch prison must become a witch, or be tortured until he invents something out of his head and, God pity him, bethinks him of something. I will tell you how it has gone with me. The executioner put the thumbscrews on me, both hands bound together, so that the blood ran out of the nails and everywhere, so that for 4 weeks I could not use my hands, as you can see from the writing. Thereafter they first stripped me, bound my hands behind me, and drew me up in the torture. Then I thought heaven and earth were at an end. 8 times did they draw me up and let me fall again, so that I suffered terrible agony. The executioner said, "Sir, I beg you, for God's sakes confess something, whether it be true or not. Invent something, for you cannot endure the torture which you will be put to. And even if you bear it all, yet you will not escape. Now, dear child, here you have all of my confessions, for which I must die. And they are sheer lies and made-up things, so help me God. For all this I was forced to say through fear of the torture which was threatened beyond what I had already endured. For they never leave off with the torture till one confesses something. Be he never so good, he must be a witch. Nobody escapes. Dear child, keep this letter secret so that people do not find it, else I shall be tortured most piteously, and the jailers will be beheaded. So strictly it is forbidden. I have taken several days to write this. My hands are both lame. I am in a sad plight. Good night, for your father Johannes Junius will never see you more."
At last, though the flames were still unsated, the people grew impoverished. Rules were made and enforced, restricting the fees and costs of examinations and examiners. And suddenly, as when in war funds fail, the zeal of the persecution died out.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
The witch trials of Salem, Massachusetts marked the end of what the Wiccans call the burning times. But the techniques developed in the Inquisition, slander, torture, and mass murder, have served as a model for the horrors of our own century, from the purges of Stalin to the Holocaust to the killing fields of Cambodia. In one sense, the burning times have never ended. Only the victims have changed. The lies about witches, however, live on, perpetuated by the popular media.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
It's all right. You can get up. She's gone.
In Hollywood, the whole notion of witchcraft is one that I I think you can say the less they know about it, the better for them.
You stupid woman. Do you honestly think that I believe any of that rubbish?
Yes, it does seem like nonsense, doesn't it? Just a silly woman setting fire to some cards.
I mean, Hollywood always has been very much a bottom line operation. It's what will sell, it's what people will buy. If for some whimsical reason truth and accuracy suddenly sold at the box office, you would just suddenly have it right up to your nostrils. But this is probably not going to happen.
We're witches, wizards, and warlocks. We're the reason honest people purchase door locks. We've turned princes into frogs, peasants into pheasants, soldiers and sailors into swine. We've never been accused of being angels, but as for being devils, we're divine.
These stereotypes continue to affect real people in very real ways.
A group of witches have been driven away from a community near Lithonia. They say they will hold no more outdoor services because police cannot guarantee their safety against citizens who don't want them there. And they feel they are the victims of religious intolerance. Tom Sinkovitz reports.
For several months, some 30 witches had been meeting at this altar next to the Arabian Lake. Their services include chanting and singing, and the witchcraft scared the citizens who live nearby. They went to police with stories about the sounds they were hearing.
Singing in unison, then there would be a type of incantation of some kind. And then they would be dancing and singing.
Did you ever hear any screams?
Yes.
Beyond disturbance of the peace, is there any law being violated?
Actually, no, not that I know of at this time.
Leaders of the witches say people have a Hollywood misconception of their beliefs. Today, for instance, they watched news reports showing a man pulling their altar apart just to see what was inside.
I was absolutely horrified. I don't think that they would do that to some other church. That would be totally unheard of. I think people would get very angry and raise a cry throughout the town. But because we are a minority religion, it was apparently okay for this man to do this while other people stood around and watched it. And I call it desecration.
Lady Galadriel says her church might use this episode to take a legal stand. But they won't be meeting here until what they consider a modern-day witch hunt comes to an end. Tom Sinkovitz, 11 Alive News Tonight.
Mary Mead. I'm Lady Galadriel, High Priestess and Elder of the Grove of the Unicorn, which is a congregation that practices the religion of Wicca, also known as the Old Religion, or perhaps to some of you as Witchcraft. We'd like to invite you in today to get to know us a little bit better, learn some of the things that witches do, and why we believe some of the things that we do.
Lady Galadriel and her coven responded by producing a documentary about Wicca through their local cable access station. Morning Glory Zell co-publishes the journal Green Egg and works to improve the public image of Wicca.
Recently, I was at a convention, two conventions in fact, that unanimously passed a resolution condemning abuse in any form. It was a unanimous resolution that was passed that condemned the child abuse, substance abuse, sexual abuse, and any other form of ritual abuse, any form of abuse that leads to the destruction and the harm and the detriment of individuals, of the body, mind, and soul. For we're a religion of healing and of love.
Starhawk has written 3 best-selling books about modern Wicca. She also leads public rituals and lectures widely.
On the other hand, you know, if you're not called to be a witch or call yourself a witch, that's also perfectly fine. You will probably be called to do something else equally difficult in your life.
Frodo Okulam has recently been ordained as a minister in the Metropolitan Community Church.
I believe that our spirituality, especially women's spirituality, is the greatest force for change that there is.
Now, every action that we instigate has effects forever. The words that I put out now will have an effect forever. Not true.
black son remains firmly in the broom closet.
I'm also opposed to this because I work with young people, and I see the needs of young people daily, and I know what witchcraft teaches, and I know that what it teaches does not meet the needs of the young people. What it does is it leads them down a path of destruction and ultimately against God.
I'm here for two reasons. Number one, it's not the big deal about the tax money. I'm paying a lot of taxes myself. I'm here because Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world.
Zuzana Budapest spoke after giving 15 minutes of her time to her detractors.
Blood-bought and born again, have enough courage to stand up. We'll find that we can shut down abortion, we can shut down witchcraft, we can shut down sin, we can take and tear down the idols and the worship of Baal if we'll only do it in decency and do it in order and let Jesus Christ be the author.
Use me still, dearest goddess. Find me a place. Put to shame all those who would destroy my good name. My friends, feel free to applaud because I need some support here.
There were other Christian groups here in my support. There are good Christians who see beyond their noses and they read more books than the Bible.
I feel that you're really struggling for a worthy cause here.
Well, yes, I do. I think nature religions are very good for people. It's a fine religion. It doesn't burden you. It gives you peace of mind, gives you a worldview where you belong. Gives women a lot of integrity, gives men a lot of respect for women, and it's pro-sex, it's pro-life, it's pro-body, it's pro-earth, it's pro-universe, it's pro-science, it's pro-reading, pro-books, pro-libraries. I mean, that's pretty good religion.
May the circle be open but unbroken. May the peace of the goddess go in our hearts. May